Nay, Harden wants to be traded. He's been very adamant about it. If he is, will he be better suited for Brooklyn or for Philly?
Well, the first thing I want to say is this. A lot of people are giving him a lot of heat because of how irresponsible they believe and unprofessional he has been. If it was an aberration, my attitude is this with James Harden. He did it on purpose because he wants to emphatically send a message to the Houston Rockets. He wants to get the hell out of there. He doesn't want to be there anymore. He might want to end his career there a few years from now and come back, but he wants to go someplace else where he's got a shot to win a championship. That's his priority, and I think this was a maneuver he used to try to force Houston's hands. It's unfortunate, but we've seen it before when players are desperate to get out of a situation. Having said all of that, if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Brooklyn for this reason and this reason above all else. I think James Harden with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant is the only possibility to dethrone the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't think anybody else has a chance. I sincerely mean that from the bottom of my heart. I think that the Lakers are not only clear favorites, they're prohibitive favorites by a distance. I look at the Los Angeles Lakers as being head and shoulders above everybody else right now, and I don't think anybody has a chance of knocking them off unless James Harden arrives in Brooklyn. The only reason I don't say Philly is because I think Philly would have to give up Simmons or Embiid max to get Harden, whereas obviously Brooklyn would not have to give up Kyrie and KD in order to get him. Him joining them, that three, I think is what it will take.
Well, I disagree with the Nets thing because when you look at LeVert and Dinwiddie's contracts and when they're up, et cetera, they're not really that valuable as tradable commodities, more than maybe what the Sixers have. Thibault, I mean, yeah, they are more than Thibault or Tobias Harris, where you have to take a bad contract, or some draft picks that Morey may be able to kind of maneuver with. So I would say if we're assuming that you can add James Harden without giving up, obviously not KD or Kyrie, then why do we have to assume that you must give up either Simmons or Embiid to get Harden in Philadelphia? And so if we're looking at it that way, I would say Philly. But more than that, Stephen A., even if we're not looking at it that way, I think I'm going to say, I'll say Philly. And here's the reason. If he goes to Brooklyn, they will be favored to, at the very least, make the finals. You have two MVP players, caliber players in KD and James Harden, and you have more than just an all-star in Kyrie Irving, right? And yet, how do we know how the chemistry works there? Because James Harden hasn't lasted long with any other superstar. And Kyrie's a ball stopper. By the way, Kyrie's one of my favorite players to watch. I know it sounds like I'm negative on him a lot. He might be the best show in the NBA. He's way up there. But he's a ball stopper, and so is James Harden. How does that work? Versus Harden goes to Philadelphia, and now whether it's Harden or Simmons with the ball in their hands, it's a problem. If you have to put Simmons in a dunker spot and Harden has the ball, that's impossible. But let's say Simmons is out of there and it's just Harden and Embiid. How does that work? Inside out with Harden and Embiid? Yeah, because Embiid is a force to be reckoned with, and obviously so is Harden. And if you win there, not only is the fit better, and you're playing for the GM who knows all about you, have a good relationship with, but if you win in Philadelphia, it wasn't like as soon as you got there, if you don't win, it's a disaster. Mm-hmm. You have a good chance to win, and if you win, you get credit. In Brooklyn, you probably have a worse chance to win than people realize, and even if you do, well, you were supposed to. So I'm going to go with Philly.
Well, I feel where you're coming from. I just disagree because I think that in Philly's case, you'd have to give up Ben Simmons. There's no way that Houston would do a deal without him, or for Harden without including him. In the case of Brooklyn, when you've got Dinwiddie and you've got LeVert who can ball, and then you add to that somebody like a Taurean Prince and numerous picks, you never know what could happen. And when I think about Harden with Kyrie and KD, first of all, we all know KD to be one of the most efficient and unselfish superstars in the game in terms of he doesn't require a lot of volume in order to be very efficient and productive. In the case of James Harden, I would remind everybody over the last 4 years, he's averaged at least 7 assists. One time about 4 or 5 years ago, he led the league in assists at 11.2 a game. And he has the capability to be incredibly unselfish and distribute the basketball. We may have questions about Kyrie because Kyrie's a showstopper that with the nastiest handle on earth that can dance all day on you. But when you look at Harden and KD together, I think that would be far more lethal, and I think that would be the lone chance. Now, if you had Embiid with Simmons and Harden, of course I feel that way. I just don't think that Simmons would be there. But in the case of Harden with KD and Kyrie, I think that is I think that's more plausible to happen, and I think that's the only shot the entire NBA has of knocking off the Los Angeles Lakers. There is no other chance of knocking them off, in my estimation.
Well, I mean,
So
unless
is it
Harden goes
inevitable?
out west
Is it inevitable
somewhere
that he leaves?
to a team that could really use him?
What'd you say, Charlie?
Is it inevitable he leaves? Is it a done deal? Harden is not.
Well, I think it's
staying in
inevitable
Houston.
that he's gone. I just don't think it'll happen before the season. Houston knows he wants out. And Harden went out of his way to make it clear he desperately wants out. So because of that, you can't keep him there because it's just going to make, look, PJ Tucker is one of the classiest dudes you can find, man. He didn't want to touch the subject. He didn't want to be put in this position.
Protocols so he can eventually participate in Rockets team practice. He was, of course, absent for the start of training camp in places like Atlanta for Lil Baby's birthday party, reportedly cited around Las Vegas for his own party. I don't know. It's reported, of course, that he would like to be traded out of Houston to a, quote, contending team. Meanwhile, the Rockets have continued to make alterations to their roster. Of course, the huge trade with Russell Westbrook going to Washington for John Wall, adding Boogie Cousins, adding Christian Wood. And Tillman Fertitta got on CNBC yesterday, the Rockets owner, and said, "We've done nothing but gotten better in the offseason." So Chene is an H-Town native. Do you buy Fertitta's comments?
Look,
That face is amazing, my friend.
I always say, from the 281, the 713, the 832, I always am proud to be Houston Texan. But when I heard those comments, I was a little shocked just because it seems like a smokescreen. Like there's smoke there, like cap. Like this is not the truth necessarily. And maybe this is what he wants us to be and say, oh my goodness, everything's going to be all right. But when there's smoke, right, a smoke screen, there's usually a fire. And it seems like the Rockets are on fire, not the best way. The way I see this really is just that you can't hide from the facts. You know, you do have someone that wants to be there in John Wall, who after injury is going to be on a mission to prove himself, especially with his contract. But overall, the Rockets, they've been moving the last few years with a walking bucket, James Harden, but they haven't been operating with the identity that they needed to find success that will keep him there, which is why he's looking elsewhere.
To be fair, Rachel, that longer conversation in that interview, he says a lot of the right things about how James wants to win a championship and how Tillman hopes that it's going to be in Houston where they think they have a chance to do that. And that's all the good kind of cleanup talk you do. That's what you say in public. Behind closed doors, obviously, is a different story. But to say that this team got better, I mean, either you're delusional or you're just really bad at lying. Either way, that doesn't help. You don't need to go that far. He could have stopped at just, hey, we want to win a championship. James wants to win a championship. We'll get it done. But to say that out loud just indicates a complete unnecessary understanding of what's happening. When you think about trading Russell Westbrook, an all-NBA player, who you gave up 8 billion first-round picks to get a year later for a guy who hasn't played in 2 years, and you got 1 first-round pick for that in compensation. There's no way you could tell me that's an upgrade. Even if John Wall is the John Wall that we remember from 2 years ago, he's still not as good as Russell Westbrook is right now.
Chene, we haven't had you on since the trade, Wall and Westbrook. As a Houston native, how do you feel?
Honestly, I'm emotionally numb. I'm rooting for John Wall. He, as someone who has come back from injuries myself,
right.
I think a lot of times you have this mission to prove that you are just as good, if not better than you were before. And I think he will have that motivation. And really, given what he's gone through recently, a fresh start is good for him. But overall, for the organization, a lot of the moves, I feel like we're trying to just attach ourselves to value, not necessarily a mission or an identity. Because for the last few years, we've been centered upon analytics and shooting more threes and going in isolation. But as a team sport where teams win through collaboration, that's sort of where we've let the numbers do the talking instead of